Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. So while we're waiting, pull up the chat window and shoot something in the chat. Let me know where you're calling in from. I'm in central Canada, so it's nice and plenty cold here this morning. We're definitely in the depths of winter for sure. So hopefully you're calling in from somewhere a little bit warmer. Also, while we're waiting, I'm going to see if I can set up a poll here. A couple questions you can answer. Okay, you should see something pop up, or maybe there's a button at the bottom where you can take a quick poll and answer a few questions. There's just a few questions in there. I want to make sure that I'm getting covered what you're looking here for in the commissioning webinar. So if you could just take a minute and complete that poll, that would be much appreciated. While we wait for a few more people to join, and we'll start in 2 minutes, let me just see if I can share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen and you can also see me presenting, and we should be ready to go very shortly here. So hi, Darnell from Lexington. Good to have you here. I got some good information for you. For sure, it'll help you with your project commissioning. So anybody else that's just joined, pull up the chat window there and shoot a note in the chat. Let me know where you're calling in from. And we should be able to get started in just 1 minute. We'll start right on time, right at the top of the hour. And my intention is to keep this to an hour. Sometimes if there's lots of good questions, we go past the hour, but the core presentation content should stick within the hour so you can get all the information that you need here today. Egypt, Denmark, Saskatchewan, awesome. Washington, Kazakhstan, we got people from all over the world. Isn't the internet amazing how we can connect with people everywhere? I think it's pretty incredible. Hi, Netherlands. Hi, West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach sounds a little bit warmer there than here in Canada. Okay, so we're right at the top of the hour here. Let's get started. So for anybody that's just joined, if you could complete the poll that I just launched in Zoom there, you should see an icon or something you can click on to pull that up. If you could complete those answers, that would be much appreciated. I just want to make sure that I'm covering the right topics here to get you the commissioning information that you need. So today's presentation is on commissioning project management. What we really want to do is be using the best-in-class software tools and project management processes to lead and manage our projects. And you're about to get the #1 commissioning project management framework to manage commissioning of capital projects. So like I mentioned earlier, this presentation is meant to be interactive. So pull up the chat window there. And if you have any questions as I'm going through the material, shoot your question in the chat and I'll get you the answers you're looking for. You can ask any questions as we go along here. I've got the chat window up and I'll watch for your questions. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation as well. So ask your questions during the presentation or hold on to them till the end, whatever you prefer, so that we can get you the information that you're looking for. The intention is to keep this presentation to an hour. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer if there's lots of good questions, but we'll just see how it goes. So I've been using the commissioning project management frameworks we're going to discuss today on several projects. I've used the commissioning project management frameworks we're discussing today in the power industry to build hydroelectric generation projects in Northern Canada. I've used these commissioning project management frameworks to build transmission projects, HVDC transmission. I've used these in the aerospace industry, building satellites and rockets for the Canadian Space Agency. I've also used these same commissioning project management frameworks in the wastewater treatment industry, where we're expanding and upgrading a wastewater treatment plant not too far away from here. I'm also on the organizing committee for the Commissioning Professionals Society, where we host an annual event in Houston, Texas. and gather a lot of the best and the brightest commissioning minds in the world to discuss some of the challenges that are faced on projects with commissioning and how we can elevate the importance of commissioning on projects. It's a really good event. You should check it out. Now, I'm not the only one getting results with this approach to commissioning. Through our certificate program, we've helped several other people and projects get the same results. For example, Sheldon or Jonald or Kale and many others, after joining our certificate program, they all tell me that this was an eye-opener. They had no idea what was all fully involved in planning for commissioning. They tell me that this was the most interesting and applicable course they've taken in years. And that's because it is. It's based on a lot of practical information. This is not theoretical stuff. They tell me that this is the first commissioning explanation that they found that fully matches with what really happens at site. And that's because it is. It's based on real world experience. This isn't textbook stuff. And you can also go to our website at commissioningandstartup.com. At the top, there's a button you can click on that takes you to success stories. You can see all the experiences that people are having with our programs and the success that they're having. So definitely check that out at commissioningandstartup.com. So I know these processes and tools are great stuff. They're helping a lot of people, and they can definitely help you on your projects as well. So just to be clear, though, this is not technical commissioning. If you're looking for how to do an electrical high pot test, if you're looking for ASHRAE or NEBB building commissioning, HVAC test and balance, if you're looking for MEP commissioning, if you're looking for specific flushing standards for food grade piping, you're not going to find any of that here. That's not what this presentation is about. But technical commissioning is not actually what's missing on projects, though, is it? There's a lot of smart people working on projects, and they'll get testing completed one way or the other. What's missing on projects are the project management aspects that are supposed to go around the technical commissioning. What's missing are the processes and tools to manage commissioning starting much earlier in projects. So let's look at a simple org chart. There's three main project functions that we need on every project, right? We need to get it designed, and then we need to get it built during construction, and then we need to get everything tested at the end during commissioning, right? Or if we've got an EPC contract and you're designing construction or part of the same contract structure, this all applies as well. There's typically someone to manage the design, and your design managers, they're following design best practices and processes to follow. There's always someone to manage construction. There's an entire industry dedicated to construction project management. But where are the project management tools and processes to manage commissioning? On a lot of projects, they don't even exist. There's a gap in the industry, and this gap is real. There's a huge labor shortage on projects and a real opportunity for people to move into these specialized roles for people that want to learn commissioning project management and work on the most fun and challenging projects. Now, I do want to highlight the distinction between technical commissioning and commissioning project management. Often people refer to commissioning without understanding this distinction between the two skill sets that are required. Technical commissioning and commissioning project management are separate roles, and they do require different skill sets. To be clear, you can't really learn technical commissioning in a course. You do need that hands-on field experience, right? It's just too dangerous. Nobody's going to teach you in a course how to do a high voltage, high pot test on a piece of equipment and then send you on your way. That's just not going to happen. You need to be working with someone who has done these hazardous tests in the field before and can show you how to complete testing safely. When you're working offshore or working with high voltage, you really need to learn from experience to do some of the technical commissioning tests that are required on projects. However, when it comes to commissioning project management, you can learn this, and you must learn this in advance before trying to lead or manage commissioning. You need to understand the software tools to use and the commissioning processes to follow before starting any project. Think about surgery as a good example. Do you want a surgeon in the operating room trying to figure out what to do on the fly? Of course not. I don't. You want the surgeon who has studied the process and knows the exact steps to follow and the proper tools to use, including when something goes wrong. If you want to manage commissioning, then you need to study the process to follow and the tools to use before starting any project, period. So with this gap that exists in the industry and the missing commissioning project management function on a lot of projects, it's no wonder projects are late and over budget. And this is a significant opportunity for you since there are so many projects being built to support electrification of our infrastructure, to support new battery supply chains for EV vehicles, or all the projects that are going to be required for climate change to make some of our transitions possible over the next few decades. Capital projects are being built all over the world, and they need people to fill these commissioning project management roles to fill the gap that exists on projects. And this is the gap that we help you fill with our Commissioning Academy programs. This is the gap that we fill with our certificate in commissioning project management. This presentation is for project managers that need to understand the tools and processes required to finish projects during commissioning, and also for technical commissioning experts that want to move up in projects to understand commissioning project management so that you can get the project roles that you want and complete capital projects much more efficiently. With the gap that exists in the industry, when there's no processes or tools to manage commissioning, projects are just gambling. There is no way to affect the outcome of your projects. There's no way to meet your cost and schedule objectives on your projects. All project teams can do is roll the dice and hope for the best at the end. It's a crapshoot. And that's what a lot of projects do, right? This is why this gap on projects needs to be filled, and I'm going to show you how. And at the end of this presentation, if you'd like more help, I'll show you how with our certificate program and our guided support services. So if this all sounds interesting to you, then I'm glad you're here. Before we continue, for anybody that's just joined, that wasn't right at the beginning, there's a poll. If you could just hit the Zoom button there to answer the questions in the poll, that would be super helpful, just so that I can review and make sure I'm covering the topics that you want to hear in this presentation. So I do want to share some statistics with you that are quite concerning. This is Professor Bent Flyvbjerg. He's from the University of Oxford, and he has compiled a database of over 16,000 projects from the last several decades. He's also written a book. It's called How Big Things Get Done, and it's a really good book. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. He's got lots of good information in there. But what his research shows is that only 8.5% of projects are on time and on budget. That means over 90% of projects are late and over budget. That's terrible. The construction industry definitely has a terrible track record. And to be clear, there are certainly lots of challenges contributing to these statistics, right? There's lots of civil works challenges of coordinating workforces and underground conditions and heavy civil equipment. There's lots of challenges there for sure. There's equipment procurement delays for equipment that requires long lead times, say 6 months or more long lead times. Getting that stuff to site when it's needed is certainly challenging. Construction productivity, managing large workforces, or if there's large volumes of concrete to be placed, there's certainly lots of challenges that exist on projects. However, the complexity of completing projects during commissioning is one of the main contributing factors to delays when there are no systems and controls to manage commissioning. I'm going to show you the software tools and the project management processes that are required to eliminate the chaos during commissioning and give projects visibility and clarity during commissioning so projects can do much better than these statistics and improve project outcomes. So let me know in the chat, is this making sense? Have you seen some of these statistics before? I don't know if you've had a chance to read Professor Flyvbjerg's book. If you have, shoot it in the chat, or are any of these statistics concerning to you on your projects? Where do your projects fall within these statistics? Are they typically on time and on budget, or are they falling into the other side of the statistics where 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget? Let me know in the chat. So when I do this presentation, often the first thing what a lot of people want to know is just tell me what to do. Just give me the checklists to follow, or just tell me the steps for commissioning. Just tell me which is the best software that I need to use so that I can go off and commission my projects. Just tell me, for example, how do I test a combustion gas turbine? Just give me the 6-page document that shows me what to do, or just tell me the best software to use and I'll follow that. And when I hear these questions, I already know these projects are in trouble because there's a little bit more to it than that. You're never going to find a single document that shows you the steps for commissioning. You're not going to find that magic software that tells you how to commission your projects because each project is different and you need specific processes and tools to manage your specific project commissioning. So first, let's address the problems of what not to do before we talk about what to do. Projects are having problems. We know this. The data shows us that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. Projects are losing time during commissioning and they're missing deadlines on projects. But why is this? Why are projects struggling? We need to address these problems before I teach you what to do. There's two common mistakes, and just by fixing these two common mistakes, projects can see huge improvements. So what are these two mistakes? Mistake number one is leaving commissioning to the end of projects. We've been told for several decades that commissioning takes place at the end of projects. We need to finish construction and then we need to test everything at the end, right? But this is actually not true. This is, of course, what most projects do. They roll the dice at the end, and maybe you've had this experience on projects, but this is what leads to problems on projects. In fact, to be successful, the commissioning process starts right at the beginning during your feed processes, and we need to be implementing our commissioning software during feed to manage our commissioning processes. When commissioning is left to the end, there's no way to be proactive. All the problems are left at the end of the project, and there's no time to recover. The damage is done before on-site commissioning even begins. So let me see some of the comments here. Darnell says, not familiar with these statistics. I'm eager to learn more. Awesome. I've got some good information to share with you. I would like to understand the processes associated with commissioning. Perfect. Then you're in the right place because we'll go through exactly that. Yes, regardless the industry. Yeah, Professor Flibberg does have some interesting statistics in there and breaks it down by industry. The worst performing industry is nuclear. Lots of challenges there for sure. And the late and over budget statistics he presents there are worst for nuclear. Some of the systems that are more modular, say like solar or wind, where you're erecting a lot of the same things and it's repeatable, those industries have a lot better on-time performance. So it does vary by industry for sure. Current project is 8 months late and over 1 million US over budget. Yep, sounds familiar. Sounds like pretty much every project that's out there, right? And probably the discussion from months ago had you talked about commissioning software, they'd say, nah, we don't want to pay for that. We don't want to hire a couple extra people. We'll save that money, right? Well, I guarantee you it costs less than $1 million to implement some of that stuff. That the opportunity earlier in the project to put these processes in place certainly would have mitigated some of that $1 million damage, I'm sure. So it's just like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. His habit number 2 is to begin with the end in mind. And we must be doing this on our capital projects. We must be implementing commissioning project management processes right from the start. You must have a clear vision of your project objectives right from the start, which means you must have visibility and clarity on how to complete your project during commissioning and startup, especially when you're working with such large project teams on complex projects. There's just no way to be successful on projects unless you have clear objectives at the beginning. It's like that for everything. Projects are no different. You got to know where you're going at the end before you start if you want to be successful on projects. Imagine flying a plane without knowing your destination. You'll just end up flying in circles and land probably exactly in the same spot. You'll never get anywhere because you don't know where you're going. At the highest level, your project objectives, of course, are to deliver high quality systems on time and on budget. And the only way to meet these project objectives is to achieve successful commissioning and startup. Therefore, everything you do on projects, all design and all construction activities must be with the clear objective to successfully complete commissioning and startup on your project to meet your project and service date. And this is why it's critical to implement commissioning project management early in projects so that objectives are clearly defined for everyone to see, and so that everyone can understand how their role contributes to successful commissioning and startup. We want to have a strong finish on projects to deliver high quality systems on time and on budget, and you can only do that with a clear understanding of the end during commissioning and startup. All projects that have ever finished on time and on budget, this is what they're doing. They're implementing commissioning project management right at the beginning so they have clear goals and objectives on their projects and to ensure everyone is working towards the same project goal, which can only be successful commissioning and startup to finish your project on time and on budget. Our certificate program makes it super easy for you to understand how to do this. Mistake number 2, a lot of projects are still using paper and spreadsheets on their projects, and they're using paper sign-offs or they've got their custom spreadsheet to manually track commissioning. And while this used to work 20 years ago, projects are far too complex. There's just too many documents and there's too much information, and it's impossible to keep track of everything manually in a spreadsheet. It's just not going to happen anymore. We need real-time data to make informed decisions. We can't wait until Friday's spreadsheet update to get our status of the week. We need to be able to make decisions now based on real-time information. If we're working on activities in the morning, we need to know by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, did that get accomplished? Because we're going to reset and we're going to do activities for the day after. And if you're just guessing or you don't know if you're waiting for Friday's update, you can't make those decisions fast enough to keep up with the pace of projects. So even if you've used commissioning software in the past and weren't happy with it or didn't like it, there are much better options that are available now that are quite powerful to help us on our projects. And I'm going to show you which is the best software for you to use on your projects. So if project teams are still using paper and spreadsheets, then it's as if everyone is trapped in a maze and everyone has their own interpretation of how to get to the end, right? And it's super hard to complete a project when everyone's going in different directions and nobody agrees on how to finish your project during commissioning. With no clear commissioning objectives, project groups, they spend more time arguing in meetings about how to complete commissioning rather than actually collaboratively working together to solve problems and get the job done. Implementing commissioning software early in projects solve this by giving everyone visibility and clarity on what success looks like during commissioning to eliminate the chaos and clearly define what's required to successfully complete projects during commissioning. Commissioning software really isn't just used to manage commissioning, it's actually used to complete your project. And isn't that the reason that projects are started in the first place, is to finish them so that we can use the facilities for productive outcome? Commissioning software makes it super clear for people on how to complete projects during commissioning, simplifying how projects are completed so you can meet your project objectives, which is, of course, on time and on budget completion. When projects make one or more of these two common mistakes, when they leave commissioning to the end, or if they're still using paper and spreadsheets to manage commissioning, it's because they lack a project management approach to commissioning. And when projects suffer from cowboy commissioning, is what we refer to it as, the work is inefficient, you miss your deadlines, everything is unplanned and unorganized, your project teams are unclear of how to finish projects during commissioning, and it's the reason projects end in commissioning chaos in a lot of cases. It's easy to avoid these mistakes when you understand commissioning project management, the processes to follow, and the software to use. And I'm going to show you how so your projects can avoid cowboy commissioning. So any other questions? Let's see what we've got here in the chat. If you do have some more questions, shoot them in the chat. If you've got some cowboy commissioning stories or your projects are suffering from cowboy commissioning, let me know in the chat as well. Let's see what we got. Real-time data is key. Yeah. Tools available, Clarity, MS Project P6. Yeah. And the commissioning software takes it to another level to incorporate all that information in one spot so that we have a clear definition of how to complete projects. All right, so these are the processes that are required for commissioning, and there's 3 frameworks that are required for commissioning project management. There's our planning frameworks that are required as part of our commissioning project management processes, our construction completion frameworks, and our on-site commissioning and startup frameworks. And these make up the integrated commissioning process. When you establish your integrated completions processes early in projects, you're able to complete projects as efficiently as possible. This reduces delays during all stages of your projects. This minimizes the number of snags during commissioning. There's always going to be a few snags, but certainly not the number that we'd be used to. When you're following structured processes, it significantly reduces the number of snags that hold us up during commissioning. And you eliminate the chaos to avoid cowboy commissioning, saving projects millions of dollars and months of schedule by completing projects more efficiently. And all of this is to be able to deliver high quality systems that we can use for decades of reliable operation. Yes, Darnell, I can see your hand is raised, so just shoot your question in the chat and I'll get your question answered here. I'll watch for what you got there. Okay, no problem, by mistake. I'll wave back. However, When you're missing these integrated commissioning processes, it may seem like you're making progress on projects until, of course, your on-site testing starts and nothing's working, things are missing, and there's constant delays. You're losing time during commissioning and you're scrambling at the end to try and get everything finished. You're faced with costly delays and you're probably panicking to try and keep your head above water as executives are breathing down your neck and demanding results and demanding for you to finish your project. You end up with cowboy commissioning. This describes probably 90% of projects, right? This is how projects often end at the end in a scramble during commissioning. Without integrated completion processes on projects, well, what do project teams do? They dump everything on the commissioning guys to sort it out at the end, right? The commissioning guys are treated like the wizards that'll show up later and magically make everything better. 16-hour days and 7-day weeks to try and recover. And the plan is just, I guess, fingers crossed and hope the project will eventually end. But hope is not a plan. We can't be doing that on projects. The blame game starts and the finger pointing on what went wrong earlier comes out, and you end up with a stack of claims so high that you'll be fighting in court for years to try and sort that out. And this is hardly a good approach to projects, but this is how a lot of projects end. Jose, cleaning punch items really during on site, really a big challenge in database. Yep, it's certainly a big challenge, which is all those punch items, they're all small little items. They might not be huge showstoppers, but all those small items add up and there's a lot to do there for sure. I personally find that unmotivated and poorly trained trades slow it down. That can sometimes be a challenge. There's lots of challenges in the industry for sure. Commissioning software helps with that because for some people that aren't as familiar with commissioning, and we can't expect everybody to be experts in commissioning, but at least the software tools gives people that visibility on what they need to do, how they need to do it, and when it needs to be done to answer those 3 critical questions to help people that don't understand commissioning at least know how their role contributes to successful commissioning. There's also warranty period. Yep, for sure. We don't want a lot of issues spilling into warranty because that's certainly not good for operational facilities and issues causing outages during planned operations. Okay, so this is what makes up the integrated completions process. But first, why is it called integrated completions process? Well, that's because commissioning project management must be integrated into all early stages of projects. We must have commissioning integrated into our procurement processes, into our design processes, into our construction processes, and especially into our construction completion processes. Remember, there's one commissioning process to follow through all stages of the projects. There's one commissioning team and one commissioning process, regardless of which group you're part of. All groups on projects have a role in commissioning, and it's the only way that this all comes together at the end of your project. So let's go through each framework in the process here, and I'll quickly highlight what are the steps that make up the commissioning process. So the first element in our planning framework is our contracts. So when we're preparing our design contracts or our construction contracts, there's critical inputs that need to go into there to define what's required for commissioning. A lot of the contracts you see are used to get projects started, but they're pretty light on details to actually get the project finished. Well, when we're writing and preparing contracts at the beginning of projects, they need to have all the end of project completion details so that teams know what their role and responsibility is to complete the project. That's certainly not going to be all of the technical details because a lot of the designs aren't completed when contracts are being written. But we know the project management frameworks and processes that must be followed, and this needs to be defined upfront in contracts where which software tools are going to be used, how people need to be interacting with them, the information they're going to be expected to provide and get from software tools, the gated workflows that we're going to follow, what the clear definition of static completion is for construction complete and start of pre-commissioning. All of these details need to be defined in our contracts up front. Without these details, then we're not properly defining the rules of the game, and our projects are in trouble before we even start because our contracts are missing these clear completion details. Even when it comes to equipment procurement contracts, we need to be defining in there properly expectations for offsite testing. A lot of offsite testing might be straightforward for more of the simple items for, say, a pump that we're very familiar with. But when it comes to more complex items that require integrated factory acceptance testing, say our control and protection cubicles to test both the hardware and the software in the factory before it leaves, that this needs to be defined upfront in contracts for equipment procurement, or at least defined in contracts to the groups that are responsible for equipment procurement, so that our offsite testing aligns with our on-site testing. Too often that's missed in equipment procurement contracts, and stuff's not tested properly in the factory, and we got a bunch of junk that arrives at site that never works or wasn't properly tested and has to get sent back to site and causes huge delays. So contracts are our first key critical element of planning in our commissioning project management frameworks. The second element is our feed processes. So I'm sure you've been part of lessons learned before. Projects typically go through a lessons learned, and at the end of the project, they gather up all their items that they want to learn and improve on next projects, but then those quickly get filed away and forgotten about and never get applied properly on the next projects, right? Well, our feed processes is where that takes place. During preliminary design reviews and during detailed design reviews, we need to be making sure that our end of project expertise, our commissioning personnel, our operational personnel are involved in our upfront design activities during feed for preliminary design reviews and detailed design reviews. That's the method to get our lessons learned fed back to earlier stages of the project and complete that feedback loop. Without that, there's a complete disconnect between the beginning of the project and the end of the project, and pretty much impossible to make sure that designs created 2, 3, 4 years in advance are what's going to be needed for on-site commissioning and operational efforts. So that feedback loop that's part of our that should be part of all projects to incorporate those lessons learned back into our feed processes need to occur. And there might be more detailed design packages that will require an even more in-depth review for process control narratives or control networks or HMI presentations screens for user interfaces. These design packages probably require an even deeper dive, where there may be a series of workshops to make sure that designs coming for these more specific or complex packages are getting the appropriate reviews in place so that they align with what's needed later in the project. So that's our feed processes that are included in our commissioning project management frameworks here. Third item is our factory acceptance test and integrated factory acceptance test frameworks. I briefly touched on this during contracts, and you'd be familiar with a lot of the FAT testing that needs to take place. We've been doing that for decades. If there's a pump that needs to be tested and there's 3 points on the pump curve to test while we run it for a while in the factory, those are all pretty straightforward. We're not too worried about those. But when it comes to integrated factory acceptance testing and testing of both the hardware and the software in more complex control and protection cubicles or control networks, we need to be making sure that these items are being integrated in the factory before they are shipped to site. There's if you test just the hardware in the factory, these cubicles are useless without the software. Software is such a fundamental control component of a lot of the things that we build today that we need to be integrating and testing the software before those hardware cubicles are shipped to site. That way we know that when they arrive at site, things are going to work. And I have a good case study that I'm going to share with you after this presentation that you can look at. 2 projects that took place at roughly the same time here in Canada, and they're different approaches to integrated factory acceptance testing, where the project I was working on here in central Canada, we took a very specific approach to integrated factory acceptance testing, and that turned out very well. And you can review the outcome of the other project that didn't take that integrated factory acceptance testing approach and how it turned out for that one. So watch for that after this presentation. So our next item is our project systematization. So this is one of the main reasons that the commissioning team needs to be involved early in projects, is to systematize our project into the various systems and subsystems that are going to be worked with on the project. So at a certain point during design, during our feed processes, we'll be getting the tag lists that are generated to define all the equipment tagged items, all the cable tagged items that are part of the project. And the process to systematize these and group these tags into the various systems and subsystems is critical at this point in the project, because we need to be taking a subsystems and systems-based approach through all phases of the project. When that's defined earlier in projects, then that systems and subsystems-based approach must flow through all stages of the project, through design, through construction, through commissioning, to align identically with our project startup sequence. If that's not occurring, then everything gets mixed up and jumbled, and design guys are working on the wrong order of things, and construction guys are working on the wrong order of things, and nothing's going to line up later when you get to commissioning and startup. If you've got systems out of order that don't align with our how the project has been systematized, then it's not going to come together successfully at the end. So we need to be involving commissioning groups earlier in the project and systematizing projects, so we make sure that we get a systems-based approach through all stages of projects. So next is our gated commissioning workflows. So this is the sequence that each of those subsystems is going to flow through for construction completions, pre-commissioning, commissioning, startup, performance verification, and trial operation. So what is that sequence that we're going to use on our project? And it can vary and be very project specific in the milestones and the gates that you want to have as these subsystems go through the projects, through the sequence. But we need to be defining that up front to know what are our workflows and what are the gates that we're going to use to make sure that subsystems are complete as they flow through each of these workflows. So as we're going through our planning efforts, we're going to get to a certain point where we've got a lot of this defined. Then we can start preparing our commissioning software in advance, loading it with our project systematization, loading it with our commissioning workflows so that we can model our project and how we're going to manage commissioning within our commissioning software to show everybody and give everybody that visibility on how we're going to track these systems through completion and how we're going to perform testing and completion on a lot of systems. So we need to be defining that up front, ideally in contracts. Maybe you don't have the specific software name of what you're going to use, but you need an indication in contracts to say we're going to be using commissioning software and this is how it's going to be expected to be used, and this is the gated commissioning workflows that we're going to follow, so that everything's defined up front. Further through our commissioning planning efforts, we're going to be able to prepare our commissioning sequence of activities that aligns identically with our project startup sequence, and then formulating our commissioning schedule based on durations and dates that we're applying in here. All of this gets loaded in our commissioning software, our sequence of activities, our schedule of activities. So we have a clear definition within our software of what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and who needs to be doing it. We'll also need several forms and certificates to manage our process. We've been using forms and certificates on projects for decades, but when I say forms and certificates, this isn't a paperwork process. These are the forms or certificates that are used within our commissioning software as the sign-off for each gate through our gated commissioning workflows. So we need to be defining what forms are going to be used, what milestones are going to be tracked, and most importantly, who has the authority to sign off on each of these gates in the workflows to make sure that things are actually complete before we move to the next stages in our workflows. Checklists and procedures, we're familiar with those. We've been using checklists and procedures to check our items and equipment on projects for decades, but this is the formalization of actually implement these in a digital workflow within commissioning software where all of our checklists are loaded in there, all of our procedures are loaded in there, and everything's tracked within the software to know what's complete and what's not completed. And a lot of the software simplifies that significantly. It comes preloaded with thousands of checklist templates and forms and everything you need within the software if you get the right system on your projects. So it simplifies creating our checklists significantly from what we've been doing in the past. But most importantly, we need all of our documentation ready to go in advance, loaded in software, so that when we get to on-site commissioning, we can focus specifically strictly on execution, because there's no opportunity to plan during on-site commissioning. We need to go, and we need to go fast. So then the last item here, part of our planning efforts here, not because it's the least important, but safety. We need to be making sure that our safety processes are established before on-site commissioning starts. Our PSSR processes, I see the comment in the chat there, our emergency response plans, and the commissioning team is relied upon heavily to make sure that these processes take place safely. As the equipment startup experts, our health and safety groups are relying on the commissioning team to have these processes in place and execute these processes to make sure that everything takes place safely. And we need to make sure our processes for PSSR, test readiness reviews, Lotto programs, everything's ready to go in advance. So that's everything that's required for our planning frameworks. The next aspect is our construction completion frameworks, and there's two project management portions here. The first one is our punch list walkdowns and categorization. So this you might be familiar with. We've been doing this for quite some time, but this is the formal process to actually have these workflows loaded within software and formalize our punch items, track them within software to make sure that everything's identified, categorized, and so that nothing gets missed. When you're using software correctly, you're also tagging each of those punch items to a date and a name to know what's outstanding, when it needs to be done, and who's responsible to do it. So you get clear visibility on everything that needs to be done today, everything that needs to be done in 2 weeks from now. So even the smallest little items don't slip through the cracks and everything gets tracked and completed. And then the second framework for construction completions is our subsystem static completion. And I see a lot of projects that don't do a good job at this, but when we use our software tools correctly, it gives us the ability to define that crystal clear definition of what done actually means. So what does static completion mean from a construction perspective? What needs to be done for construction complete, for physical items, and for documentation? On projects, everybody's definition of done means something different, right? Done means something different to the commissioning guys than to the construction guys than to the design guys. But when you go through this formal process and define your static completion, you define every tagged item, every document, everything that's required for each static completion, for each gated milestone of your commissioning workflows. So there's no confusion. It's crystal clear what needs to be done and when it needs to be done when you're properly using your software. And then the last item here, of course, is our on-site commissioning and startup workflows that are required. And there's 6 frameworks that are required there. So what's required for pre-commissioning and what's required for commissioning. You can think of those two as pre-commissioning would be your equipment level test. You're going to test the pump on its own by itself. But then when we move into some of the commissioning tests, we're looking for a group of equipment to be functioning as a subsystem or a system. It's not too critically important that something takes place during pre-commissioning or something that takes place during commissioning, as long as the right sequences are taking place and the right activities are taking place at the right time. That's all defined in your software. But that's the general thought between pre-commissioning and commissioning is equipment testing versus subsystem or system level testing. Then as we're moving into our startup processes where we're doing our first energizations of main circuit elements for the first time, or we're introducing process fluids for the first time, we'll go through our startup sequences there to get some of the systems up and running. Once they're running, moving into performance verification to fine tune the operation of a lot of the systems, get the best performance that we can out of them before we move into trial operation. Your contracts may have a trial period of say 3 days or a week or 30 days or whatever. Your equipment is required to operate uninterrupted for that trial operating period. Once we get through our trial operating period, then we can move into handover of the systems, or if it's a staged handover or a full functional handover of everything and however we've defined that. So you can see there's a lot involved in commissioning project management. Just let me check the questions here and see what we've got. How best can startup work with construction before they leave to capture startup data and get their help during commissioning so it feels like last part of construction instead of something separate? Absolutely. And that's why it's critically important to define static completion in contracts, because it defines construction's role before static completion and construction's role after static completion, where they would be more leading activities versus supporting activities during construction. And that when that's clearly defined up front in contracts, then that answers that question so that everybody knows how their role transitions during that critical static completion, and most importantly, what is required to achieve static completion. I'm enjoying your presentation and additional knowledge to help me better project manager. Awesome. Absolutely, Ray. Glad I can help. Preservation on equipment mostly not being followed. Yep. So that's why we need software to help us clearly define some of these things to help people understand what they need to do. And there's no escaping it. You don't get past the gated milestone unless you complete these activities. So it's crystal clear. It's black and white. You're either done or you're not. And the authority that determines if you pass through that gate is clearly defined in software. And that's just crystal clear. Are the completion processes shall need revisions, and when should be necessary? I'm not sure I completely understand your question, but yeah, completion processes can require revision because we are developing some of this as we proceed. We're putting all of our planning frameworks and our commissioning project management frameworks in place here, kind of as designs are being completed and as construction is being completed. So as some of those final design details are available, like when we actually get red line marked up drawings and find that there's a new cable that's been added or a new termination that's been added, there's going to be some updates for sure to make sure our final documentation is 100% accurate. But we can get to probably 80% well in advance of those final design details. So hopefully that answers your question. Jose, we covered PSSRs. The repetitive products processes are much easier to design, develop, test, and launch. These repetitive products have been through initiative to closing, so most of the issues have been resolved and best practices and defined. Much more to share. Absolutely, yeah. Like we said earlier, if you're working on solar or wind farms that are repetitive, they do have much better on-time performance. But even for a one-time project, say like a wastewater treatment plant, there's really nothing repetitive in there. Every project's unique, but there is a lot of processes that you can model within your commissioning software that do come out actually repetitive and are quite repeatable on even a very unique project. So that's what we want to be leveraging with our software to help manage some of these processes and take the complexity out. Mechanical completion certificate integration, the end user and utilities, TCCC. Yep, all good milestones to be tracking for sure. So we did go through the slide on the screen here, and you can see there's a lot involved in commissioning project management. And what a lot of people don't realize is that 80% of the work takes place before your on-site commissioning even starts. So when people are leaving commissioning to the end of projects and they're trying to cram that 80% of the work on top of the 20% during the last phases of on-site commissioning, of course that's never going to work. Of course that creates cowboy commissioning. You can see why 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget when they take that approach. So when you do this right and you get the first 80% correct on your projects with best-in-class commissioning project management, the last 20% during your on-site commissioning actually becomes much more easier. And your projects will end a lot better when you put in the upfront work and do this 80% of the work that's required to properly implement commissioning project management. And this is how you avoid cowboy commissioning at the end of your projects. And this is how you complete capital projects on time and on budget. So is this making sense? Let me know in the chat if you're familiar with this process that we just went through. Do your projects use all of these elements to properly plan your commissioning project management frameworks in advance, or are you skipping a lot of these processes and trying to jam them into the end of the project and trying to scramble and figure things out at the end? Let me know in the chat. What are some of the software you use in construction project or commissioning project? I know a lot of people ask or have this dream that we can find this magic software that you can use for construction and use for commissioning. I don't suggest that. Construction is a very different function than commissioning. They're tracking different things and they require different processes. There isn't a software I've found that can track both of those well. For example, construction software, you need to track a lot of equipment procurement, right? You don't need that for commissioning. Commissioning, you're tracking completions and testing. They're just different functions. And I would strongly encourage you not to try and mash those together, is keep them separate. And it works really well keeping them separate so that you can define that clear interface between them. If you're referring to the commissioning software, then these are the commissioning software tools that you need to use on your projects. When you know how to implement commissioning software on your projects, you can eliminate the chaos and avoid cowboy commissioning. You're able to complete projects much more efficiently, saving projects time and money. You can have the confidence, you can meet your project deadlines, and most importantly, you're able to deliver high quality systems that we can use for decades of reliable operation. However, if you're not using these commissioning softwares on your projects, or you're not implementing them correctly, or only using partial capabilities, or even worse, if you're still using paper and spreadsheets, then you're stuck with cowboy commissioning. Your projects are inefficient and it's a scramble at the end of your projects, just like 9 out of 10 projects are. So what do project teams do if they're not using these software as well. You probably got your all singing, all dancing Excel macro that you've been using for years and thinking that's just fine. But while this used to work 20 years ago, projects are just too complex and the work needs to be managed more efficiently. So the list I've got on the screen is a list of over 20. I think there's 25 on this list of the different commissioning software vendors on the market. There's quite a few. So you can see that this is a problem that vendors are definitely trying to solve. And you need to make sure that you're using the right one on your projects. We've reviewed every one of these on this list, and we know which ones are the best to use for your specific industry. So at the Commissioning Academy, we don't sell software. Instead, what we've done is we've partnered with the best software solutions that are out there for each specific industry. So if you work on power systems, we've identified the best software to use. If you're in the oil and gas industry, there's a couple of good options that you should be using. Data centers, there's a preferred software option. If you're working on mining projects or say chemical projects, hospitals, airports, pharmaceuticals, semiconductor, water treatment facilities, there's a specialized software that was developed specialized for each specific industry, and we can easily tell you which one to use. We've checked out and had the demos of a lot of these softwares, and we know which ones have their strengths and which ones have their weaknesses, and we can also show you how to use it. So we simplify that significantly. If you don't have this list that's on the screen, you can get a copy of it. If you go to learncsu.com, there's a link at the bottom where you can get access to this list. You can see all the 25 plus options that are there, and you can check them out. So which software for data centers? Absolutely. Yeah, we've got that all laid out. We can have a chat and talk about which one might be the best. There are some stronger ones that are often used in the data center industry. And if you want, we can have a chat and see what your specific needs are and see what is the best software. Also, go to learncsu.com. You can get a copy of the list there for sure. So the software tools are certainly a big piece of the equation. They're just not the biggest piece. Commissioning project management is not fundamentally about software. And I just don't want you to feel like you're sitting in the cockpit of a 737 trying to figure out how to use this software and get it set up on your projects. Commissioning is, of course, complex, and naturally the software is going to be complex as well. The thing about these software programs is if you have great commissioning processes, then you'll love these software systems. It will really help you complete your projects. But if you don't have great processes, then you'll hate these software programs and probably wish you never saw them. And most projects are not super process driven. And we see a lot of projects that are using software incorrectly. So before defining your commissioning processes in software, you first need to create commissioning processes that are actually worth repeating. And only once you have robust commissioning processes should you jump in the cockpit and start configuring your software, because we certainly don't want to take a bad commissioning process and digitize it. Our training program shows you exactly how to configure your software so you can get the most value from it. When project teams are using their software incorrectly or they've missed critical functionality in their software, it becomes a burden rather than a help. And they're not even aware that they're doing this. They're fighting with their software, or people don't want to use it. They want to go back to their paper and spreadsheets, and they're leaving piles of money on the table on projects. It's costing projects dearly. So we don't want you to fall into this trap that a lot of project teams get stuck in. With our certificate program, you get exactly what you need to learn exactly how to apply these software tools on your projects in the best possible way so that you can complete commissioning as efficiently as possible. We make it super easy for you with a guided workbook to show you exactly what you need, which is used then as your master guide to configure your software. We made it super simple. You get everything you need in an easy to follow format. So that's everything you need for your equipment tag lists and how to split those into subsystems and systems. You get all your checklists and to see how that's loaded and tracked for completion in your software, all your commissioning workflows and how those are completed and tracked, all of your defined responsibilities in your workflows and how to actually assign these responsibilities in the software to hold people accountable for their role and what they actually need to do on projects. And this is often something we see a lot of project teams doing wrong, is how to track schedule milestones in your commissioning software correctly. A lot of projects don't even do this. They leave it separate in Primavera or MS Project or whatever, and they think they're fine. But when you're missing this key critical integration, then you're really limiting the ability of your software to help you on projects, and it's costing projects millions of dollars, and they don't even realize it when they're using software incorrectly. So we show you not only how to use the software to track what needs to be done, but more importantly, when it needs to be done with these proper schedule interfaces. And when you get this right in your software, it becomes so much easier to finish projects. Our certificate program literally gives you a step-by-step guide on how to use your commissioning software in the best possible way, so you don't have to feel like you're stuck in the cockpit having no clue what to do. You're able to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible with our step-by-step guidance. Water treatment startups, Blue Rhythm. I haven't heard of Blue Rhythm being used on a water treatment plant. That doesn't mean that it isn't used. I know Blue Rhythm is a market leader when it comes to building commissioning. I've talked to the Blue Rhythm folks, and they've got some good software there for sure. When it comes to building systems, HVAC systems, those types of things, that's their specialty, and they're really good at building systems. So commissioning project management is actually more than just commissioning. It's about being able to finish your projects in a structured and organized manner. And if you don't have robust processes to finish your projects, then you probably shouldn't be starting projects in the first place. It's kind of irresponsible to start spending on money on a project and have no clear plan on actually how to finish it and stop spending. Without structured processes and tools to finish projects during commissioning, you're killing your project's chances of success. Okay, so these are the two common mistakes that are made on projects: leaving commissioning to the end of projects and still using paper and spreadsheets on projects. And these are the two main reasons why projects are struggling with commissioning. And if you fix just these two things, you've already made huge improvements on your projects. So this is the case study that I briefly wanted to touch on. I'm not going to go through it here because I'll send you a link to where you can watch the replay. But this was the two HVDC projects that took place at the same time here in Canada, where one turned out very well and the other did not. And I'll save some time. I won't go through it here, but definitely check out that link after in your email to check out that case study. So we've covered a lot of good information today. We've talked about the commissioning project management processes to follow, and we've talked about the software tools required to manage your commissioning. So let me know in the chat, everything we've discussed today on the processes and the tools, do you have what you need? Do you feel ready to take on a commissioning project management role? Do you understand the processes that you need to follow? Do you understand the software to use? Can you go start planning your commissioning project and start implementing these tools and processes on your projects? And if you do, then what's your first step? What's the first thing you're going to do on Monday? How are you going to get this rolled out and implemented on your projects for everything that we've discussed today? What I've given you today are the commissioning project management tools and processes that successful project teams are using to complete projects during commissioning. What I've given you today are the commissioning tools and processes if you want to avoid making costly mistakes on your projects, you want to avoid the cowboy commissioning that is inevitable at the end of projects and the chaos at the end of projects, if you want to avoid selecting the wrong commissioning software, and you want to avoid the consequences of a failed project. Of course, we all want these things, and I'm sure you want these things as well. I'm sure that you want to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible. You want to use the best tools and processes for commissioning. I'm sure that you want to skip the 10-year learning curve to try and figure this stuff out that I had to go through to work on projects and learn this stuff. And I'm sure you want to be able to work on the biggest and best projects. So the way I see it is you have two choices. You can spend the next 10 years learning how to do this on your projects, and this is a totally legitimate way to go. This is what I did. I've spent the last decade working on projects and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't to learn the processes to use and the software to follow, and you can certainly do the same as well. Or you can just stick with your cowboy commissioning if that's working for you on projects, the chaos at the end of projects. You can choose to stick with cowboy commissioning. You can miss out on a lot of project roles when you don't have these skills that are required on projects to complete projects successfully. And you certainly won't be able to finish projects efficiently without some sort of structured manner for commissioning project management. Now, option number 2 is you can get the commissioning project management resources you need right now. You can get the best in class commissioning processes. You can get access to the top rated commissioning software. You can skip the 10-year learning curve that I had to go through to figure all this stuff out. And you can work on the biggest and best projects. So ultimately, you can complete commissioning as efficiently as possible. Now, if option number 2 sounds like the better approach, we do have 2 different options how we help you and your projects. And I'll break them down for you in just a second. But after working with so many people on so many projects, we've seen what works and we've seen what doesn't work to complete projects. And we've seen how to help people in projects with commissioning. So what I want you to do is go to learncsu.com and answer a few questions and see if we can help you with your commissioning too. We can help you get the project roles you want, and we can help you successfully complete commissioning as efficiently as possible. It's super simple. You go to learncsu.com, you can click on one of the big purple buttons, answer a few questions, and hit submit. When you hit submit, you'll know right away if you and your projects meet the criteria to join our Commissioning Academy programs. Okay, so here's how we help people and projects with commissioning project management. We offer 2 levels of support. The first level is for individuals that want to get their certificate in commissioning project management. If you want to learn the commissioning processes to follow, if you want to learn the software tools to use, and you want to get your certificate in commissioning project management, then this option number 1 is the best option for you. When you enroll in our Commissioning Academy program, you get the complete integrated completions process, everything that we've talked about today, including an overview of all the typical mechanical, typical electrical, and automation pre-commissioning and commissioning tests that take place on projects. You get access to our software tools training where you get hands-on experience where you can actually log in and work with the software tools, some of the leading software vendors that are out there, to see how they work and also to learn how to use and apply these software tools on your projects. You get access to our document database, so our certificates, forms, checklists, procedures. There's several hundred documents in there that you can use as templates to create documentation for your projects. You get access to our private members LinkedIn group where you can collaborate with other people taking the course and find others all over the world that are working on projects similar to yours. You also get access to our commissioning jobs network, and this is a great way for people to reach out to recruiters and employers once they complete the program to find their next project role. Ideally, when you receive your certificate in commissioning project management, you post it to our commissioning jobs network, and you're able to find your next commissioning role. We're connecting people that are looking to fill these specialized project roles to help address this labor shortage that exists on projects to get the right people in the right roles. When you complete the program and pass the exam, you get your certificate in commissioning project management, showing that you've completed the program and that you understand the processes and software tools required to manage capital project commissioning. This shows that you're ready for your next project role, and you can post your certificate to our commissioning jobs network to show others that you're serious about commissioning project management. So let's check out the questions here. Darnell, very informative. My job does not start until next, but having information explaining processes will aid. Awesome, glad I can help. Does the system also resolve paperwork on closing punch items? Absolutely, it does. Yeah, essentially, you can complete projects with 0 paper. Now, maybe that's an ideal goal. There's always something that requires paper, right? If you're working in intrinsically safe areas where you can't use electrical devices, you don't want to purchase intrinsically safe devices, you're still going to need a paper process. So all the systems can incorporate paper into them for those processes that do still require paper, but we're trying to eliminate the paper so that we can have information flow a bit quicker. Okay, Brad, thanks. Great presentation and info. Mention the cost for individual registration. Yes, so let me just catch this slide, and then I think it's the next one. So I just wanted to highlight our commissioning jobs network, because what people are using this for is reaching out to recruiters and employers in this network. They're always looking and monitoring our worldwide network here for commissioning jobs. So you can go join this commissioning jobs network now. It's on our website. join it. And then when you get your certificate, you post it to this network. And it's a good way to get people's attention online and reach out to some recruiters and employers to get the roles that you want. So this is really perfect for individuals that want to get their certificate in commissioning project management and advance their commissioning career. You get a massive head start. So go to learncsu.com right now and submit your info to see if you qualify to join. To answer your question on cost, so the way that works is if you go to learncsu.com, enter your information. We just want to make sure that your projects are a good fit for what we've got here. Submit your information. If you meet the criteria to join, then on the next page, you get all the information you need, including cost. So submit your information and everything's in there that you need, all the cost, all the pricing options, payment options, payment plans, single payment, deposits you can leave. It's all in there, enrollment links. So definitely get your information in at learncsu.com and you'll get everything you need. Our insurance companies fully agreed with zero paper. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. If you're referring to like pen on paper digital or a pen on paper real signature versus sign off in software, maybe that's it. Otherwise, you get way more tracking of information. If insurance companies are looking for something, you get way more data in a data management system than you ever will with paper. So maybe that's the only concern is pen to paper sign off versus a digital sign off. That might be an insurance company's concern. But if that's the concern, then you can still do a paper sign off. You can have your digital system generate a piece of paper. You can put pen to paper and sign it if that's required for whatever reason. The systems are flexible to meet whatever your workflows are or whatever is required. So our second level of support is perfect for companies that want an easy solution to digitize their commissioning workflows and eliminate cowboy commissioning. So this might be a good option, say, if you've been working with paper and spreadsheets and you've got already great commissioning processes, but it's time to finally digitize your workflows. We make the transition super easy for you. If you've thought about making the digital transformation for a while, now's the time, because if you don't do it now, the upcoming AI revolution that we know is going to take place over the next few years is going to force you to adapt in the next few years. So we don't want you to get left behind. We make the transition as easy as possible for you, taking baby steps on small trial-based projects to make sure everything works for you before expanding systems to other projects or larger within your network. So you can easily get your teams ready to use these new systems with the training options that we have. All of this so you can finally complete your projects as efficiently as possible and are able to manage projects, many projects at the same time as the volume of work on projects continues to increase, which they certainly seem to be in the next few years as we're taking on more projects for climate change, for EV batteries, for electrification. There's a lot of work going on and a lot of companies are growing and expanding to take on multiple projects, multiple work fronts, and you need digital systems to be able to manage the increased workflow or workload that's coming up. So here's how this works. Go to learncsu.com. There's two options on that page. You'll see the two big purple buttons. If you're interested in commissioning project management for yourself to get your certificate in commissioning project management, you'll click the first button. If you're interested in commissioning project management for your organization to upgrade your commissioning tools and processes, then you'll click on the second button for my organization. Each will take you to a page with a few questions to confirm that you and your projects are a good fit. And when you click submit, you'll get an instant response if you and your projects meet the criteria to join. Super simple. If you do meet the requirements to join, you'll get access to everything you need, including the enrollment page. You'll get access to all the pricing options you can choose to enroll. You'll get access to see how the enrollment period works as well. There's also several other methods you can use in there to contact us if you have any other questions or need any other answers in our programs or the information that we've provided here. So when you submit your information, you'll have everything you need at learncsu.com. We've really made it super simple for you to get the information you need so you can make an informed decision to see how we can help you and your projects, and so that you can succeed with commissioning project management. So go to learncsu.com right away, answer a few questions, and get access to the best source of commissioning project management expertise that's available. So this is literally the most comprehensive source of commissioning project management expertise ever created. Maybe there's something else out there, but I've never been able to find it. There's definitely a gap in the industry and an information vacuum about commissioning project management, which is why we created the Commissioning Academy, to give you the resources you need to succeed with commissioning project management. So go to learncsu.com and submit your information right now. You can also go to our website and see the success stories of others that are having with our programs. Go to our website, commissioningandstartup.com. At the top, you can click on success stories and read all the amazing feedback we receive on a daily basis. People love what we've got, and you can see what they're saying. Go to commissioningandstartup.com and read the success stories to see for yourself. So finally, there is a super simple way to get the expertise you need for commissioning project management. LearnCSU.com is where you need to go. Click on the big purple buttons to get started. If you want your certificate in commissioning project management, that's the first button there that says for myself. If you're an organization that wants to upgrade their commissioning systems and processes, the second button is for you, for my organizations, where you can tell us a little about your projects, and then we can meet and discuss your project needs. Now, if you do have all of this figured out on your projects, and this is exactly what you're doing, and you're using best processes, and you have the best software tools on your projects, then please keep up the good work, because we need more people like you helping projects to succeed. However, we can see that a lot of project teams have not figured this stuff out, because 9 out of 10 projects are still late and over budget, right? These are people and projects that we know that we can help to get more qualified commissioning professionals working on projects, and so that we can help improve the outcome of projects. So if you're ready to get a massive advantage with commissioning project management, go to learncsu.com, click on one of the big purple buttons, submit your information, and see if you meet the criteria. This is literally the fastest method to get everything you need for commissioning project management, to get your certificate in commissioning project management, or to get your company systems and processes upgraded for increased commissioning efficiency. So I'm looking forward to helping you and your projects succeed with commissioning, and thank you for joining. So I do have time for some Q&A. I know we're a few minutes past the hour. So if anybody needs to split and take off, I completely understand, but I do have some time for Q&A. Let's see what's in the chat. And then I've got a few typical questions here that I often get that I'll highlight for you as well. So where did we leave off here? Copy of this presentation to forward to our management. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you a link to this replay. You can watch it. Zoom maybe takes a little bit afterwards to process it, but once it's ready, I'll send that out to you. So watch your email. You'll get a link to this replay. My question is, certificate in commissioning project management is approved from any party or standard. So that's the thing, is wouldn't it be nice if there was a global governing body that governs commissioning? That way we'd all have the same terminology all over the world. That's way we'd be following a global standard, but it just doesn't exist. So maybe someday there'll be a global organization to manage commissioning, but it doesn't exist. So what you're seeing here, what we've gone through here, is the best global source of commissioning project management information that you'll find. When we went out to the industry several years ago, when we put this together, yeah, none of that existed. There's a gap. There's a complete vacuum of information, and that's why projects are struggling, because there's nothing you can go to understand commissioning project management in an effective and industry best class method. So it's all right here. We've got it in Commissioning Academy. That's the gap that we're filling here to give you the information you need for commissioning project management. So definitely check it out. Thank you for this opportunity. It's really helpful, especially awesome. Glad I could help. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoyed it. So bottom line, does returning huge amount from commissioning budget to operations can be an evidence? So I wouldn't necessarily say it's returning money to operations, right? There's capital costs and there's operating costs. Usually when you're looking at the capital costs, there's huge dollars added to capital costs later in the project when there's delays during commissioning. The cost of commissioning itself isn't all that expensive, but the cost of delays during commissioning are astronomical, right? Each one of those days during commissioning can become extremely valuable due to project burn rate. At the beginning of your project burn rate is smaller. There's less resources working on the project. There's been less capital outlay. So the daily cost of the project at the beginning is lower. But when you get to later in the project during commissioning, the value of one day of the project, I've worked on projects that have a $5 million per day burn rate. Each day of commissioning is extremely valuable. So you don't want to screw that up. And you need a robust plan to make sure that every day of commissioning goes smoothly as it's supposed to, mitigating all the issues that could potentially delay that. Because you screw that up and you delay your project by a day, there's $5 million out the window. And most projects aren't delayed by just a day. They're delayed by months. So add that up over 3, 4, 5, 6 months, $5 million a day delay. There's a huge cost. Those are capital costs that are getting added to the capital cost of the project. Certainly your operational budgets would be separate, and maybe in your higher financing groups, those funds are transferred between capital and operating, but we focus on getting the project completed on time and on budget to minimize those capital cost overruns and to simplify operation of the project after the project by not dumping a whole bunch of problems on operations and incurring even more operational costs due to forced outages or unplanned shutdowns or those types of things. So definitely a cost either way in either one of those buckets. Okay, absolutely. Yep, Michael. So I'll send a copy of the replay. You'll get an access to that as well. So after commissioning, there is huge amount returned and was used to operations budget. Yeah, I think I understand your question, and I hopefully answered it in those two different buckets. That's each company's prerogative. If they've saved money on their capital costs and they want to transfer that to their operational budgets, they can certainly do that. But that's more of a finance question and not so much a commissioning question. We certainly want to optimize execution of the project to minimize those capital costs and bring projects on time and on budget. What companies do with that and how they interlink that with their operational costs is certainly up to them. So another question I sometimes get is we rely on third-party commissioning to do this, or we have consultants that are looking after commissioning. They'll take care of everything. We don't need commissioning project management. We'll just bring them in at the end of the project and they'll get this all done for us, right? And while I'm sure you have very smart technical commissioning experts involved on your projects, I can almost assure you that you're not getting the commercial and project management aspects of commissioning that you need. It's not their role. They do technical commissioning, not commissioning project management. These groups are great at technical commissioning, but they're not addressing the commissioning project management aspects that you need for your technical commissioning to be successful later in your project. And most importantly, by the time your technical commissioning experts are involved later in the project, it's already too late to do anything proactive to help your technical commissioning be successful. You've already missed your opportunity to manage commissioning. So what I recommend, if you do think this is the case, that your consultants or your third-party commissioning are getting you what you need on your projects, go to learncsu.com, submit your information, and let's have a chat, and we'll see if you actually are getting what you think you're getting from your groups that are involved on your projects. Thank you for a clear explanation of what commissioning is and how it could help us. Awesome. Glad I could help, Ivan. Sometimes I get the question, what's the difference between CXPM and other certifications like BCXP or ASHRAE or NEBB or some of those others that you see out there? So these are all related to building commissioning or technical commissioning, and you will need these roles on your projects. These roles are for some of the technical people that are actually doing the commissioning. CXPM is one level higher. So these are the roles, essentially those other roles, your BCXP, ASHRAE, NEBB, those are the technical roles doing commissioning. Those are the ones that report to the CXPM at one level higher. So it just depends on which role you want. If you want to be on the tools and doing the commissioning in the field, then you can go check out one of those other programs. If you want to be the one leading or managing commissioning, then our CXPM program is what you want. So sometimes people ask me, well, how does this compare to PMI? Can I just go get my PMP? That's project management, and they're telling me how to manage projects. Well, if you look at any information for PMI, you'll see that it's pretty light on details on how to finish projects. What PMI's got, and I know why they do this, is they cover a lot of the information on how to start a project, right? Your project starter and your project monitoring processes. It briefly recovers quality management, but there's nothing in there on the processes or tools required for commissioning project management, or really anything definitive on how to finish projects, because what PMI has put together is a broad global standard on how to manage projects, and they can't possibly put every possible type of project and how to finish them. And especially when it comes to capital projects, there's a very definite commissioning project management structure that needs to be in place to finish projects, and that's just not covered by PMI, and that's okay. And I think this is really why there's a lot of confusion about commissioning in the industry, is because finishing capital projects during commissioning isn't really taught to project managers. Commissioning project management is really the missing part of projects, is what's required to actually finish projects. And that's what our program covers, is commissioning project management that overlays other project management processes, but focus on actually finishing projects. So we sometimes hear people say, and I'm sure you've heard this on your projects as well, right? As well, I'll save money. I'll skip this on my projects. We'll save some money. We don't need software. We won't hire a few more people, and we'll just do all of our commissioning rate later, right? And well, that's really not going to work. And it's everything related to the project burn rate that I talked about later. Is the project burn rates at the end of projects just become massive. And if you're thinking that way, that you're going to avoid some of this upfront effort and push everything to later in your project, well, then it becomes a lot more expensive to fix issues when you're dealing with a daily burn rate delay of $5 million or more. Now, maybe your project's not a $5 billion project, you're working on a smaller project, but even if you've got a $100,000 daily burn rate on projects, this adds up quickly, right? 10-day delay, that's $1 million. So these are big dollars, and you can't be pushing this to later in the project, because it's way too expensive to deal with issues later in the project. So we don't want people to be stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. We need to get these proper risk mitigation processes in place on projects by getting people qualified with these skills to work on projects and fill these specialized roles. So sometimes people ask, well, does this commissioning project management apply to a specific industry? So remember the distinction between technical commissioning and commissioning project management. All projects, of course, do technical commissioning differently, right? Every project has unique technical requirements and unique circumstances. The breakers to close and the valves to open, these are always project specific. And even projects within the same industry, the technical commissioning is always very specific. However, the processes and tools for commissioning project management, these apply to all industries, regardless of the technical details. The same risk mitigating steps that we've discussed today, these need to be taken on all capital projects in all industries. It's always the same risk-based approach to manage commissioning, so that your project-specific technical commissioning goes much smoother. So the commissioning project management principles in our certificate program, these apply to all complex projects. So process systems, energy systems, all complex projects really involving any mechanical, electrical, and automation equipment that needs to work together at the end of a project. So to answer the question, yes, these commissioning project management principles apply to all industries. One last typical question that I get before we wrap up are, people always say, well, yeah, this all sounds good, but you know what? I'm busy. I can't do this now. Maybe I'll take it later. And I totally get it. Life is super busy. Life is super busy, and now might not be a good time to enroll in how we can help you and your projects. We do have good options that can help you with this. If you meet the requirements to join, you can always leave a deposit within the enrollment period there. That way you can get in now and you can start your training at a later date that works better for you. So this is a good option, because we know people are busy on projects, to get in now and then pick a date, maybe a few months in the future, that works better for you. To if you're just finishing a project now in the next couple months, that a couple months might be a better time to start. We totally get it. So submit your information at learncsu.com. Get in now so you can secure your spot, and then you can pick a date later in the future that works better for you. Awesome. So let's check if there are any more questions. Good morning in the principal port of the Pacific, Columbia, Bonaventure. Awesome. Glad to see you here, Carlos. Okay. So we are here to help you understand commissioning project management. We want to help you in your career to get these roles. We want to help you and your projects succeed. And we want to help with this global challenge that exists all over the world that we face together on completing projects. So there is one more question. Please highlight more for handover step, including successful startup, test run, and steady state operation. Yep, that's a very specific question, and will take some time to answer. So what I encourage you to do is we go through all those very specific details in each of those stages and how that all works in our program. So submit your information, Hani, at learncsu.com. Check out if your projects, if it's a good fit, and all the information is in there on how you can get the information that you need. So three things before we conclude here. There has been some requests for the replay. I will send you that link. So watch your email and get that link to the replay. You can also join our next webinar. So I saw some comments saying that they wanted to send this replay to others within the company. You can also get them to join our next live webinar. I'll do this again next Friday. So watch your email for that link. You can join, or you can send that link to others to join, and bring them back next Friday, or come back next Friday yourself, and we'll have another good chat about commissioning. And I will also send you the link, learncsu.com, all the access there, so you can go to check out how we can help you and your project succeed with commissioning. So watch your email for that as well. So I do want to thank everybody for joining. Lots of great comments, lots of great engagements. I do like to see people interested in commissioning project management and getting this stuff figured out, because it is a real problem on projects, and we do need to all work together to try and figure this out and help projects have better outcomes. So I thank you for joining. Thank you for your questions, and I hope to see you again. Everybody have a great day.